All right, so this week we're starting something brand new. We're doing a series called Talking Points. And you know how like when you're hanging out with your friends or people in the workplace or your family members or your neighbors or whoever, people will say you should never talk about politics or religion. Well, for the next couple weeks, we're going to talk about politics and religion. Why? Because that's what's in front of us right now. If you turn on the TV or open up the newspaper, turn on your news feed, everybody's talking about politics everywhere. And so we want to look at really the best way to handle it, because the way we handle politics has far-reaching implications, far-reaching effects, I should say. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But before I do that, there's a church in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called North Point Community Church. And they did a series on politics. They called it Talking Points. They did it a few months ago. And Tom and I both listened to it. And we were like, this stuff is right on the money. And it is so timely. So they actually made like their graphics and everything like that available to other churches. So that's where we're getting kind of this packaging from. So if you see something that's familiar, that's why. So to start out today, what I want to do is tell you a little story. Big surprise, right? So when I went to school in Virginia. And when I got down there, one of the first things I wanted to do was like go to the fast food chains that they have there. Why? Because I don't know if you've realized, but like Long Island is late to the party when it comes to just about every franchise. The rest of the country has all these amazing food franchises, and we get things like 30 years later, which is kind of sad. But so whenever I go out of state, I'm always interested. All right, what kind of restaurants do they have here? And so that's what I did. And I remember it was like one of the first weeks that I was down there. I went to this one chain I'd never been to before. I drove in through the drive-thru. I got to that little like speaker box thing, and the person that I was speaking to on the other end like didn't really seem too excited that I was there, right? Like I felt almost like I was interrupting whatever they were doing. And then when I got around to the window, they really weren't too excited to see me. And overall, it was just kind of not really a super great experience. They didn't say anything like really mean. I wasn't really that upset, but I was just kind of like, okay, that was interesting. And that was really like my first impression. And I didn't go back to that restaurant really for a while, mostly because a lot of my friends didn't love it too much. But when I would think about the restaurant, it wasn't like I had a really, really positive view. Again, like nothing horrible happened there, but it just wasn't really a great experience. And then I went to this other restaurant, which I had visited once before, but I was younger and I didn't remember it. It's called Chick-fil-A. Now, Chick-fil-A has made it to Long Island since, I was in college. But at that point, there was no Chick-fil-A on Long Island. And Chick-fil-A, I think it's pretty safe to say, they have mastered the customer service experience. And I remember going in there and my mind was just like blown with what happened when I walked in. There were people outside in the parking lot walking. It was raining and there were people outside like with umbrellas taking people to the door. They just were always going the extra mile. When I got to the counter and I ordered, the person that was up there was like so happy to see me, like they had been waiting for me. Everything I chose off the menu to them seemed like a great idea. I felt totally affirmed in all my decisions. And then every time I asked for something, it was their pleasure to get it for me. Then I went and sat down and people were coming and checking on me. This is a fast food chain, checking on me, seeing like if I wanted my drink refilled. And I was like, what is this? It's unbelievable. And the food was fantastic, but the service, like the experience there was just crazy. It was amazing. It was amazing. So for the next several years, I gave a lot of money to Chick-fil-A and ate a lot of chicken. But here's what I want you to think about, right? Like, so think about this. We have two organizations. There are restaurants all over the country. These are huge organizations. There are people like way up top. There's the owners. Then there's all these executives under them. Then there's like all these different people in different departments. There's the marketing team. There's the food team. There are the people in that actual building. There's the people in the back kitchen. There's the people in the front. There's the people that do the menus. There's people researching recipes. Then there's people out like growing the food out on farms. There's so much that goes into this experience. It is a massive, massive operation that's been around, both of them, for years and years. And for me, my whole opinion of that organization really is presented to me in like one experience. And all of that organization is represented to me often by just one person and one meal. And so what I'm getting at here is that there is tremendous power, or maybe we could even say potential in a representative. I remember when I was in high school, I had a guy from my basketball team who was from France, and he came and stayed with me over Thanksgiving break. And when I was done, like when Thanksgiving break was over and he left, I remember thinking like, wow, people from France are so fill in the blank. Maybe like you've experienced something like that before. And really that's crazy. That's crazy to think about, because that's an entire country. And there's no way this guy who had all these little like quirks and personality things really represented their entire country accurately, but that's just typically how we are. And so if you think about it, the church has been around forever, right? Like literally about 2,000 years. And there are a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions about the church. In fact, in our community, like research has shown, we've talked about this before, that really the opinion of like God and the church is not really like doing very well right now. And it's kind of fluctuated throughout the course of history. At certain points, the church has looked really great. At other points, the church has just been like, frankly, been like the villain in the story. But somehow it survived throughout history. And what's crazy to me, one of the things that I really don't understand about Jesus is that he chose to allow people, like intentionally, to be his representatives. I mean, here's this guy that did like really, really amazing things. In fact, like Christians believe that he gave his entire life for the good of people. And then he was going to let people with like bad moods, with little quirks, with bad habits, these weird things, that he was going to like let them as a whole represent him. And I'm willing to bet that when you think of God, or think of the church, no matter where you are in your faith journey, whether you're all the way like way far along or in the very beginning, or not even, maybe don't consider yourself to even have a faith journey, right? You have some kind of concept of like Jesus, God, the church, right? And I'm willing to bet that concept has probably been shaped by the people in your life, or that maybe you've seen on TV, or maybe you've read about, or maybe you've known personally, that have represented that to you. It probably is not totally based on independent study of textbooks, the Bible, right? Or whatever sources you might go to. It's more often represented by people. Now, when it comes to the realm of politics, and this is just to kind of really set the stage for the series, if you're somebody who follows Jesus, what I'm hoping we will be reminded of over the next 3 weeks is that we have a tremendous responsibility as his representatives. And in the realm of politics, we can represent him in a good way or in a really, really bad way. And if you're not somebody who follows Jesus, maybe you're skeptical, maybe someone's like forcing you to watch this with them, and you like have a really bad or maybe unappealing like picture of God or of Jesus or even of the church in general, what I'm hoping is that maybe damage control is like too strong a phrase to describe what we're trying to do here. But if nothing else, what I'm hoping you'll get out of this is the fact that as his representatives, as people who believe that we are representatives of God, more often than not, we do a pretty rough job of representing. There are moments where you'd be like, wow, I really feel like I saw some profound love in those people. But we are broken people with issues, with failures, with weaknesses. And my hope is that the next time you see someone, maybe it's a post you read on Facebook or Instagram or something that is just like downright divisive and hateful, like probably right now, especially in the next several months, like probably under the umbrella of like something political, and it's coming from somebody who is a person of faith. My hope for you is that you'll look at that and be like, well, maybe they're just not such a great representative of Jesus. So that's kind of like really like one of the overarching goals. of this series. And today, like real quick, what I want to look at, especially for the people who follow Jesus, and if you're not, like maybe you can look on here and like kind of get a picture of what we're going for. I want to look at a vision that Jesus presented to people who would follow him. This is one of the desires he had for the church, and we know this because it's recorded as one of the last prayers of Jesus. Now, we don't have too many actual prayers of Jesus that are written down like word for word, but this is one of them. And this is like, imagine if you're somebody who like prays for your kids or for people that you love. Imagine like at the end of your life, you have one more chance to have like get together and just pray for these people. Think about what you pray for. Think about how important to you those final prayers would be and what it would mean to the people who were listening that was the last thing that you prayed for, right? So just like that's the framework of this. So this is recorded in what we call the Gospel of John. So it's a story about Jesus according to John, chapter 17. And first what Jesus does, he prays for his disciples. Now these are the 12, really at this point it was like 11 guys that were going to lead this whole Jesus movement after Jesus was gone. He knew he was leaving. They like didn't quite understand everything yet. And he prays for them. And here's what he says. Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name, the name you gave me. Now, he's not literally talking about like the name Jesus, right? He's talking more about an identity, kind of like a unifying bond that they have. And then he says, like a little purpose statement, right? He says, so that, in order that, they may be one, as we are one. That's his prayer for like the immediate followers of Jesus, that they would be unified, like those 11 people that were going to continue this movement. So he prays for them, right? Those 11 people that were going to spread this Jesus movement. And then he goes on and he prays for us, the people who would believe in the message of those 11 people. And here's what he says. He says, my prayer is not for them alone. Talk about those 11. He says, I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. That's us, right? He says that all of them, this is his prayer for them. This is or for us rather. This is his parting prayer for us, his final wish for us. Think about this. He says that they may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. Right? Like the idea is that Jesus has this like obviously like very deep bond, like a shared identity really with his Father, with God, right? We believe that like Jesus said, I and the Father, we are like one, right? And he's saying like, I want them to have this deep, deep sense of unity, this shared sense of identity that they may be one. Now think about that. Think about how crazy that is. First of all, think about how different that is like from what we pray for. Like most of us, maybe I'm wrong, most of us don't like get this urge to pray for unity in the church. I don't know about you, but that's not something that regularly crosses my mind. I pray for people that are sick, pray for things that I need, pray for things that I want, pray for things that other people need, right? But I'm not like usually thinking like, oh, I really want to make sure we have unity, right? It's not something that typically crosses our mind. And at the same time, I feel like it also doesn't really represent what we typically think of when we think of what God wants for us. A lot of times, going back to politics, right? A lot of times if you go on Facebook, right, because that's where everybody has a voice. That's typically where people are most vocal on social media. Or if you see people like in a conversation, someone's arguing their Christian, their political beliefs based on their Christian beliefs, right? And they're arguing vehemently, right? Often, they are arguing not necessarily because they want to be right, not because they're trying to be divisive, but sometimes they're arguing because they feel like they have a responsibility, an ethical, moral responsibility to fight for what's right. To fight for what's right. And while I'm not saying that we should just like forget about ethics in government, that's not the point. My point is Jesus gave us a priority here. Our priority is that we would be one. Like that's a number one priority when it comes to things that are divisive. It's almost as if Jesus saw division coming. I mean, think about this. Have you ever heard of a denomination? Like we're actually non-denominational as a church, but a lot of churches have a denomination, meaning they belong to some kind of other larger group. Now think about a denominator, right? Like go back to school. Think about the last time you heard about a denominator. What's that? That's like the thing in the fraction that divides. Literally, the thing that stops things from being one, right? It's the thing you divide by. The church right now has over 30,000 different denominations. We are so divided. And I'm not necessarily saying that denominations are bad. That's not the point. The point is, it's as if Jesus knew we were going to have so much to fight and disagree about. And so, like, as he's like, I just want them to be one. Now, whether you're a church person or not, again, like unity is not typically one of the things we're thinking about and striving for, but all of us, no matter where you are on the faith spectrum, have this deep desire for unity, for a sense of community and a sense of belonging to that community, right? I just saw this video on YouTube not too long ago, and it was one of those videos where there's like clips of videos in a larger video. So I don't even remember what it was called, but there's this like shot of the city, right? It's nighttime, so all these apartment buildings that were real close to each other, and there was someone who was singing opera music, like really loud out of her window. Now I'm guessing this happened during quarantine because that was kind of like the vibe of the video. But it's dark, you see these little lights in apartments, right? And there's someone who's just singing at the top of their lungs out of their window. And you see like more and more lights come on. And when this person finishes singing, it was a woman, when she finishes singing, you hear this eruption of applause. Like everyone had opened their window and they were all cheering for her. And I even like talking about it gives me goosebumps. It was such a powerful picture of people uniting over something, right? There's everybody who's trapped inside their apartment building and they came together, and it's just like we all together had something to cheer about. If you've ever been in an athletic event or watched an athletic event, it is so powerful when something good happens for your team because everybody together in like this sense of unity gets up and cheers. It's like we were made to be part of a crowd, part of a community. Like we crave, whether we know it or not, we probably would not call it like being one, but this is something that we crave. And this is what Jesus wanted for people. This is what Jesus wanted for his followers. Like I want them, no matter how different they are, red, yellow, black and white, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, no matter like what you are, I want them to have this deep sense of unity, and I want that to be the priority because that's what we were made for, and it's a powerful thing. And so you might ask that why? Like why does Jesus want that? And again, we're given like another purpose phrase here, another like purpose clause. It's the same little Greek word. He says this. He says, so that they may be brought to complete unity, then the world will know that you sent me. He's talking to God, right? He's praying. He says, then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me. What he's saying is when people see this unity, this deep sense of unity, they will be drawn to it and it will validate the message that he has. These followers of Jesus are going out with this message that there is a God in heaven who is crazy about them, that Jesus gave his life for them because he wanted to win their heart. And what Jesus is saying is that when the world sees like how bonded these people are over that shared sense of identity, that oneness, that sense of belonging, they'll be drawn to it and it will validate that message. Like it will show the world that there is something real going on there through that sense of unity. Unity. Now here's the problem. That has the ability to influence for good or for bad. Like we have in so many cases, we have forfeited our influence for the sake of expressing our opinion. Now, what I'm not saying here is that I'm not saying you can't have a political stance. I'm not saying you shouldn't be Republican. I'm not saying you shouldn't be Democrat. I'm not saying you shouldn't be independent or libertarian or whatever. What I'm saying, though, is that the way that we talk about what we believe has to change. Has to change. It is so divisive. And in being divisive, we are forfeiting our sense of unity. We talked about the Apostle Paul, right? Like he's written all these letters in the New Testament. He talks about like the importance of having peace with one another, of being a peacemaker, of like, as he says, as much as it depends on you, live at peace with everybody. Like he wants people to be together. But he says very clearly, like if there's a divisive person, people who are splitting up this oneness that Jesus wanted his followers to have, he says, warn that person once, then warn them again. He says, then have nothing to do with them. Like this is totally contrary to so much of what he's taught. Like there's so much teaching that says like, just be together, But he's like, no. If there's somebody who is tearing people apart with their arguments, with their viewpoints, with their opinions, so well, that person, you tell them once, tell them twice, and then don't give them the ability to break people up anymore. If nothing else, that should show you how important it is to both Jesus and the writers of the New Testament that we have this bond that's one. And so right now, our country is more divided than it's ever been, or at least more divided than it's been in a really long time. People feel more strongly about their political views than they have in a really long time. The divide right now is enormous. But if you're somebody who follows Jesus, what I want you to think about for just a second is the power in the picture of a unified church in a divided country. A group of people who are one in a country that's split. Could you imagine how that would validate our message that there is a God who is real, that there is a God who offers us a type of love and a way of life that is far greater than anything any government could possibly do for us? And the question then for you, if you're a follower of Jesus, is, are you willing to do what it takes to get there? Are you willing to disagree politically and still love unconditionally? Can we figure out how to sit in a room or around a table or on the other side of a computer screen with somebody who we do not understand? Somebody whose views maybe to us are wrong or unethical? Are we willing to be patient with them even if they never come to see things the way that we see them? And are we willing to be one? And if you're not someone who follows Jesus, what I would suggest to you is that you do the same thing. Why? Because this is the best way to live. Could you imagine if we could be at peace with people who disagree with us? Like, how much better is life when we don't have to ruin our relationships because we disagree with somebody about an issue? If you're somebody who follows Jesus, you have incredible power to make a statement to the world about how good he is. Let's not take lightly the responsibility we have to be his representatives. And so that's all I've got for you this week. Really, we just want to start this conversation. Hopefully, this conversation will continue, especially if you're in a community group. There'll be some good stuff to talk about this week. And I'm sure there will be people in groups with different political views. And hopefully we'll be willing to get into the messy stuff. We'll be willing to have hard conversations. And we'll be able to practice what it looks like to disagree politically and love unconditionally. Thanks for hanging with us. See you next week.